The Galactic Council faced three humans: John Morrison, Captain Chen, Captain Marcus. The chamber was old. It had stood for 12,000 years at the heart of Station Paramount, built by species that no longer existed to host meetings between powers that rose and fell like waves against a shore. The walls curved upward in spirals of black stone, and the ceiling disappeared into darkness far above. 47 seats arranged in a circle, each designed for a different body, each occupied by a representative of a spacefaring civilization. Today, those representatives had gathered to judge humanity. John Morrison walked into the chamber with measured steps. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many first contact negotiations to be surprised by anything. He wore a simple gray suit, no medals, no symbols of rank. He carried only a small tablet containing documents he hoped he would not need to use. Behind him came Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth spaceship Resolute. She was 42, her black hair pulled back tight, her uniform pressed and perfect. She had commanded warships for 15 years and had never fired first in any engagement. Her ship waited at the edge of sensor range, running dark, ready for orders that might never come. The third human arrived from a different entrance. Captain David Marcus of the ESS Defiance was younger than Chen by 10 years, his uniform slightly less formal, his walk slightly less careful. He had brought his heavy cruiser through a jump route that the Council did not know existed. His presence had not been requested. The three humans took their positions at the center of the chamber, standing on a raised platform designed to make the accused feel small. Morrison noted the design choice and ignored it. He had stood in worse places. High Arbiter Zethus of the Veth hierarchy rose from his seat. The Veth were insectoid, ancient beyond measure, their civilization old when mammals first crawled from Earth's oceans. Zethus stood nearly 3 meters tall, his carapace gleaming black and gold, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's dim light. Humanity stands before this council to answer charges of territorial violation, unauthorized colonization, and acts of war against member species. His voice was a dry rasp that the translation systems rendered into clear words. "How do you respond?" Morrison stepped forward. "We thank the Council for this opportunity to address these concerns directly. May I ask which specific incidents form the basis of these charges?" Zethus gestured with one long limb. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a star map dotted with red markers. 17 worlds colonized in territories claimed by Council members or designated as buffer zones. Human settlements established without permission, without negotiation, without respect for boundaries that have stood for millennia. Morrison nodded slowly. "I see. And the charge of acts of war?" A different voice answered. Thorax of the Krell Dominion pushed himself up from his seat, a massive reptilian figure covered in scales the color of dried blood. The Krell had conquered a quarter of the galaxy before the Council formed to stop them. They had never forgiven that limitation. 300 of my warriors." Thorax's voice was a low rumble that needed no translation to convey its threat. "A scouting vessel near the Kepler frontier. Gone. No distress signal. No debris we could find. No explanation from your species." The chamber grew quiet. Morrison felt Chen tense beside him, felt Marcus shift his weight slightly. This was the charge that mattered. The colonization issues were diplomatic problems. A missing Krell warship was something else entirely. "Ambassador Thorax," Morrison said carefully, "we were not aware of this incident until we received the summons to this tribunal. Earth has conducted no military operations in the Kepler region." Thorax laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "You expect us to believe that? 300 Krell do not simply vanish. Someone destroyed that ship. Someone who wants to hide what they did. We are not hiding anything. We genuinely do not know what happened to your vessel." The Veth High Arbiter raised a limb for silence. "The Council has evidence to present. Human warp signatures were detected in the Kepler region during the time frame of the disappearance. Explain this." Morrison turned to Chen. The captain stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "The ESS Resolute was conducting routine patrol along the border during that period. Our complete navigation logs have been provided to the Council. We were never within 3 light years of the Kepler frontier." And other human vessels? Zethus pressed. Chen hesitated. Morrison saw Marcus watching her with an expression that was difficult to read. I cannot speak to the movements of all Earth vessels, Chen admitted. But no ship under my command was involved in any hostile action. Torak slammed his fist against the armrest of his seat. Evasion? Lies. Your species has barely crawled out of your gravity well, and you think you can deceive civilizations that charted the stars when your ancestors were prey animals. Morrison raised his hands, palms open. We have no wish to deceive anyone. We are here to answer your questions honestly and completely. But honesty requires that I tell you what we know, not what you want to hear. We do not know what happened to your ship. The Turani ambassador shifted in her tank. The Turani were aquatic beings who communicated through patterns of bioluminescent light. Delphus had represented her people for longer than Morrison had been alive, and her colors now rippled in shades of cautious blue and curious green. Perhaps the translation system rendered her lights into words. We should allow the humans time to prepare a proper defense. The charges are serious. The evidence should be examined carefully. Zethus considered this. His compound eyes moved across the three humans, studying them with an attention that felt like being watched by 1,000 separate creatures. The Council grants humanity one standard cycle to prepare their defense. The accused will remain in designated quarters under guard. Any attempt to leave the station or contact outside parties will be considered an admission of guilt. Morrison bowed slightly. We accept these terms with gratitude. The session ended. Guards escorted the three humans through winding corridors to a suite of rooms that were comfortable, but clearly designed to be monitored. The door sealed behind them with a sound that reminded Morrison of a cell closing. Chen spoke first. That could have gone worse. Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the stars. It's going to get worse. They have sensor logs showing human warp signatures near Kepler. Someone was there. Morrison sat down heavily. I was hoping you would explain that, Captain Marcus. Your vessel was not scheduled for any patrol in that region. Yet here you are, arriving through a jump route the Council didn't know existed, with information you haven't shared with Earth Command. Marcus turned from the window. His expression was not guilty or defensive. It was calculating. The Defiance passed through the Kepler sector 3 weeks ago. We were testing the new jump route, seeing how far we could push it. We detected debris consistent with a Krell vessel. Chen stared at him. You found their missing ship and didn't report it? I found pieces of their missing ship, and I found something else. Energy signatures that don't match human technology, don't match Krell technology, don't match anything in our databases. Marcus pulled a data chip from his pocket and tossed it to Morrison. Something destroyed that ship, but it wasn't us. Morrison looked at the chip in his hand. Why hide this? This evidence could clear us immediately. Because whoever destroyed a Krell warship without leaving survivors is either a threat we need to understand or an opportunity we need to explore. I wanted more information before politicians and diplomats started making decisions. Chen's jaw tightened. You arrogant fool! You withheld evidence that affects the security of every human colony. Do you have any idea what the Krell will do if they think we're guilty? I have a very clear idea, Marcus said calmly. I've seen what their weapons do to unshielded vessels. I've run the simulations on what a full-scale war would cost us. That's exactly why I needed to know more before we showed our hand. Morrison held up a hand to stop the argument. What's done is done. The question now is how we use this information. Captain Marcus, is your data clean? Will it hold up to analysis? It's genuine. The Council can verify every reading. Then we present it tomorrow. We show them that something else is out there, something dangerous enough to destroy a Krell warship without effort. Morrison stood and walked to the window beside Marcus. But I need you both to understand something. Once we do this, everything changes. We're not just defending ourselves anymore. We're telling the galaxy that there's a predator none of them knew about. Chen joined them at the window. And if they don't believe us, then we have a different problem. Morrison watched the distant stars, thinking of the worlds that circled them, the civilizations that rose and fell without ever knowing each other existed. But I don't think they'll disbelieve us. The Krell lost 300 warriors. They want answers more than they want vengeance. We just have to give them a better target. The night cycle came, and the station's lights dimmed. Morrison lay awake for hours, turning possibilities over in his mind. Somewhere out there, something had killed a warship full of the galaxy's most feared warriors. Something that left energy signatures no one recognized. Something that had been hiding in the darkness between stars. He wondered if humanity was ready to meet it. He wondered if anyone was. The morning cycle brought artificial sunlight through the windows of the diplomatic suite. Morrison had slept perhaps 2 hours. He found Chen already awake, reviewing data on her personal tablet, her face drawn with concentration. Marcus emerged from his room looking remarkably refreshed for a man whose actions might determine the fate of his species. He poured himself a drink from the suite's dispenser and sat down across from the others. "I've been thinking about presentation," he said. "The Krell respond to strength, the Veth respond to logic, the Turani respond to patterns and underlying truth. We need to hit all three at once." Morrison studied him. "You've given this considerable thought." "I've had 3 weeks to think about it. Since I found that debris field, I've known this moment was coming." Marcus leaned forward. "The question isn't whether we can prove our innocence. The question is whether we can turn this tribunal into something useful." Chen looked up from her tablet. "Useful how?" "The Council has 47 member species. Half of them hate each other. They cooperate because the alternative is endless war, but there's no real unity, no common purpose." Marcus smiled slightly. "Nothing brings people together like a shared enemy." Morrison felt a chill run through him. "You want to use whatever destroyed that Krell ship as a unifying threat. I want the Council to stop looking at humanity as the problem and start looking at us as part of the solution. If there's something out there that can kill Krell warships, we need allies, and they need us." The door chimed. Guards had arrived to escort them back to the chamber. The tribunal reconvened with all 47 representatives present. Morrison noticed subtle changes in the seating arrangements. Species that had been positioned as blocks now seemed more scattered. Word of the human evidence had spread through the station's rumor networks. High Arbiter Zethus called the session to order. "Humanity has had time to prepare its defense. We will hear it now." Morrison stood. "Thank you, High Arbiter. Before we begin, I must ask the Council's permission to present evidence that was gathered under unusual circumstances. This evidence was not immediately shared with Earth Command due to security concerns, but it directly addresses the charges against us." Torax growled from his seat. "More delays. More excuses." "No delays," Morrison said firmly. "I ask only that the Council approach this evidence with open minds. What we have to show you affects not just humanity, but every species in this chamber." Zethus consulted briefly with the other senior arbiters. "Permission granted. Present your evidence." Morrison gestured to Marcus. The captain walked to the center of the chamber, carrying the data chip that might save or doom them all. He inserted it into the Council's projection system, and the holographic display flickered to life. 3 weeks ago, the ESS Defiance passed through the Kepler sector. Marcus's voice was calm and clear. "We were testing a new jump route, one that allowed us to reach that region faster than previously possible. During our transit, we detected debris consistent with a Krell combat vessel. The display showed sensor readings, timestamps, coordinates." Marcus walked the Council through each piece of data with the precision of a man who had practiced this presentation many times. "We found hull fragments, engine components, evidence of a catastrophic systems failure. But we also found this." The display changed. Energy signatures appeared, wavelengths and frequencies rendered in colors that pulsed and shifted. These readings were embedded in the debris itself. Whatever destroyed the Krell vessel left traces of its weapon signature. And that signature does not match human technology. Torax rose from his seat. "How convenient. You claim to have found evidence that points away from your own guilt. Why should we believe you did not fabricate this?" Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "Because I'm offering you the raw data for independent analysis. Every sensor reading, every timestamp, every calculation. Your own scientists can verify that these signatures are genuine. Even if they are genuine, that proves nothing. You could have discovered the debris after someone else destroyed the ship." "True," Marcus admitted, "but consider the energy patterns themselves. Look at the frequencies. Look at the power levels required to generate these signatures." The display zoomed in on specific readings, Numbers scrolled past that meant little to most of the observers, but Morrison saw the Veth scientist leaning forward with sudden interest. Whatever weapon did this operated on principles that human science does not fully understand, Marcus continued. The power output alone exceeds anything in our arsenal by a factor of 12, and the precision of the strike. He paused, letting the implication sink in. The Krell vessel was not overwhelmed by force. It was taken apart surgically. The weapon targeted the reactor core specifically, causing an implosion that destroyed the ship from the inside. Chen stepped forward to add her analysis. I've commanded vessels in combat for 15 years. I've studied every engagement record in Earth's databases. Nothing we have could achieve this effect. Nothing the Krell have could achieve it either. This weapon represents technology beyond anything in Council records. The chamber had grown very quiet. Morrison watched the representatives processing this information. Fear was beginning to replace suspicion in many eyes. The Tyranny ambassador's lights rippled in patterns of deep concern. If your evidence is genuine, Captain Marcus, then we face a troubling question. What destroyed the Krell vessel, and why has it not been detected before? Marcus nodded. That's exactly the right question, Ambassador. The answer may be even more troubling. The energy signatures suggest the weapon was fired from a location approximately 40,000 kilometers from the debris field. We scanned that area thoroughly. We found nothing. Nothing at all. Empty space. Not even asteroid debris. Whatever fired that weapon was either cloaked beyond our ability to detect, or it moved away faster than we could track. Marcus let that sink in. Something is out there that can destroy warships without being seen and disappear without being followed. Torax stood again, but this time his posture was different. The anger had not faded entirely, but it was mixed with something else. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the beginning of fear. You ask us to believe that some unknown force killed my warriors, that humanity is innocent, but you have not explained why this force attacked a Krell vessel and not a human one. Morrison answered. We don't know. Perhaps our ship was simply fortunate. Perhaps there's a reason we haven't yet discovered. What we do know is that 300 Krell died to a weapon that neither our species nor yours can match. That fact should concern all of us. Zethus raised a limb for attention. The Council will take this evidence under analysis. Independent verification will be conducted by a team of scientists from species not party to this dispute. We welcome that analysis, Morrison said. And while it proceeds, I would suggest that the Council consider a more immediate concern. Whatever destroyed that ship is still out there. It may strike again. Would it not be wiser to investigate together rather than waste time and resources accusing each other? The suggestion hung in the air. Morrison could see the calculations happening behind alien eyes. Politics and pride warred with fear and practical necessity. The Tyranny ambassador spoke first. Ambassador Morrison's suggestion has merit. If there is an unknown threat, cooperation would be more effective than continued accusation. Torax's scales rippled with conflicting emotions. The Krell do not hide behind others. We find our enemies and we destroy them. With respect, Ambassador, Chen said carefully, your approach may be exactly what got 300 of your warriors killed. They went looking for something. They found it. They died. She paused. Perhaps a different approach would yield different results. The Krell ambassador stared at her for a long moment. Morrison held his breath, waiting for the explosion of rage that might doom them all. Instead, Torax laughed. It was not a kind sound, but it was not entirely hostile either. You have courage, human. I will grant you that. Your species faces trial for acts of war, and you lecture me on military tactics. He turned to the High Arbiter. I want the evidence verified. I want to see every reading, every calculation. If the humans are telling the truth, I will know. Zethus nodded. The analysis will be completed within 2 cycles. Until then, the tribunal is suspended. The humans will remain in their quarters. As the session ended, the Tyranny ambassador approached Morrison. Her lights flickered in patterns that the translation system rendered as private communication. Your young captain is either very brave or very foolish. Morrison smiled slightly. Most days, I'm not sure which. The evidence he presented is genuine. I could see it in the Veth scientists' reactions. They recognized something in those energy signatures. Delphus's lights shifted to deeper colors. They were afraid, Ambassador. The Veth are not easily frightened. Neither are we, Morrison said, but we've learned to work alongside our fears rather than pretend they don't exist. A useful skill. The ambassador's form rippled. I believe you will need it in the days ahead. Whatever destroyed that ship has been hiding in our galaxy for a very long time, and now it knows that someone is looking for it. Morrison watched her go, her words echoing in his mind. He thought of the darkness between stars, the vast distances that separated worlds, all the places where something could hide and wait and watch. Humanity had come to the stars looking for answers. They might have found questions instead, questions that no one was ready to ask. He returned to the diplomatic suite, where Chen and Marcus waited with expressions that mixed hope and uncertainty. They're going to verify the data, he told them. We have 2 cycles to prepare for whatever comes next. Marcus poured drinks for all 3 of them, to unknown enemies and unexpected allies. They drank together, 3 humans standing at the edge of something vast and dark, wondering what would emerge from the shadows to meet them. The verification took less time than expected. The Veth scientists worked through the night cycle, driven by something that Morrison recognized as professional obsession. When they finally presented their findings to the council, their normally calm voices carried an edge of urgency that silenced all other conversations. The human evidence was genuine. The energy signatures were real. And they matched nothing in 12,000 years of recorded galactic history. High Arbiter Zethus called an emergency session. The tribunal against humanity was not formally dismissed, but it was clearly no longer the priority. Fear had replaced anger as the dominant emotion in the chamber. The analysis confirms what Captain Marcus presented, Zethus announced. The weapon that destroyed the Krell vessel operates on principles that exceed our theoretical understanding. Power levels of this magnitude would require energy sources we cannot explain. The precision of the attack suggests targeting systems beyond our capabilities to replicate. Torax stood, his scales darker than Morrison had seen before. My warriors were slaughtered by some unknown force, and the Council's response is to verify human evidence? Where is the investigation? Where is the search for whoever did this? The Council is mobilizing resources, Zethus replied. A joint investigation has been proposed. Proposed? The Krell ambassador's voice dripped with contempt. The Krell do not wait for proposals. I have already summoned a war fleet. We will search that sector ourselves. We will find what did this. Chen stepped forward. Ambassador Torax, may I speak? The chamber fell silent. A human captain addressing a Krell ambassador directly was unusual enough to draw attention. Torax glared at her. Speak. Your instinct is to hunt, to pursue, to overwhelm with force. That instinct has served your species well for 30,000 years. Chen's voice was calm but firm. But consider what that instinct has cost you so far. A scouting vessel approached something in that sector. They were killed, not defeated in battle, not overcome after fierce resistance. Killed instantly, without warning, without any chance to fight back. You suggest we do nothing? I suggest we learn from what happened. Something in that region does not want to be found. It responds to aggression with overwhelming force. Sending a war fleet might accomplish exactly what you want. You might find whatever killed your warriors. Chen paused. And then you might learn exactly how they died. Morrison watched the exchange with growing respect for his captain. She was doing something few beings ever manage. She was making a Krell think before acting. Torax turned to face the chamber. The human speaks as though she understands war better than a species that conquered empires before her ancestors walked upright. But she is not entirely wrong. He seemed to struggle with the admission. The Krell have always been the apex predator. We have never encountered something we could not overwhelm with sufficient numbers. But sufficient numbers failed once already. The Tyranny ambassador's lights brightened with approval. Perhaps a combined approach would serve all our interests. A reconnaissance mission rather than a war fleet. Representatives from multiple species sharing risk and resources. Information gathering rather than confrontation. Morrison saw his opportunity. Earth is prepared to contribute to such a mission. Captain Chen and the Resolute have the sensor capabilities to gather detailed intelligence. We can work alongside Krell vessels, Tyranny observers, whoever else the Council deems appropriate. Zethus considered this. A joint mission would demonstrate Council unity. It would also ensure that no single species claims whatever discoveries are made. The debate continued for hours. Species that had not spoken in decades raised objections and counter-proposals. Old rivalries surfaced and were grudgingly set aside. By the time the session ended, a fragile consensus had emerged. The mission would include 3 vessels. The Resolute would represent humanity, providing sensor coverage and analysis. The Wrath of Torax would represent the Krell, providing military capability if needed. The Delphi's Mind would represent the Tyranny, serving as neutral observers and scientific support. Marcus and the Defiance would remain at Station Paramount, officially providing security for Morrison during continued diplomatic discussions. Morrison suspected the Council simply did not trust the captain who had kept secrets from his own government. That evening, Morrison called Chen and Marcus to his quarters for a private conversation. He activated a jamming device that Chen had brought from the Resolute. The Council almost certainly had ways to penetrate such countermeasures, but it would buy them a few minutes of genuine privacy. "There are things you need to know before you go," Morrison said, "things that are not recorded in any official database." Chen and Marcus exchanged glances. They had served long enough to recognize when a superior was about to share information that could end careers. For 30 years, Earth has maintained a careful deception. Morrison walked to the window, looking out at the station's construction. "When we first encountered other species, we were terrified. Our technology was primitive. Our ships were slow. We had nothing that could stand against even the weakest council member. We've improved since then," Marcus said. "Significantly. More than significantly. More than the council knows." Morrison turned back to face them. "The official count of Earth's fleet is approximately 40% of the actual number. The listed speed capabilities of our vessels are 30% slower than true performance. Our weapons technology is 2 generations beyond what we've shown anyone." Chen's expression shifted from surprise to understanding. "We've been hiding our capabilities. Because a species that appears weak faces tribunals and demands, a species that appears strong faces preemptive strikes and coalitions designed to destroy it before it becomes a threat." Morrison sat down heavily. "We've been threading that needle for 3 decades, appearing just capable enough to be respected, just weak enough not to be feared." Marcus was nodding slowly. "That explains some things I've noticed. Discrepancies in our ship performance data. Equipment that was supposedly experimental but seemed remarkably reliable. You were supposed to notice eventually. Command has been watching you for years, deciding whether you could be trusted with the full picture." Morrison smiled without humor. "Your little detour to Kepler was actually part of your evaluation. We wanted to see how you handled unexpected discoveries." "And how did I handle it?" "Better than some expected. Worse than others hoped. You kept secrets that could have been shared. But you also gathered information that might save us all." Morrison leaned forward. "The question now is what we do with what we've hidden. Whatever destroyed that Krell ship represents a genuine threat. If we hold back our true capabilities and something catastrophic happens, we will have sacrificed the galaxy to protect a deception." Chen understood immediately. "You want us to reveal what we can really do. Gradually, carefully. The mission to investigate the debris field will require us to show more than we've shown before. Our sensors are better than anyone knows. Our analysis capabilities are more advanced. We need to use those advantages, but we need to do it in ways that don't cause panic. The Krell won't react well to learning we've been hiding strength all along. The Krell won't react well to anything, but Torax is pragmatic beneath his bluster. He wants to find what killed his warriors more than he wants to punish us for deception. Give him a path to vengeance, and he'll overlook a great deal." Marcus asked the practical question. "What about the Tyranny? They'll notice if we're performing beyond expected parameters." "The Tyranny are watchers by nature. They've probably suspected for years that we weren't showing everything. Let them confirm their suspicions. They value honesty above all else. Showing them our true capabilities might actually improve their opinion of us." Morrison stood and placed a hand on each captain's shoulder. "You're about to represent humanity in a situation none of us prepared for. I'm trusting you to make decisions I can't predict. Show them what we are, but show them slowly. Let them adjust. Chen nodded. And if we find whatever destroyed the Krell ship, then use your judgment. If it's hostile, survive. If it's not, learn everything you can. Morrison's grip tightened briefly. Humanity's future might depend on what you discover out there. No pressure. He released them and deactivated the jamming device. The conversation was over. 2 days later, Chen stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the star field through the main viewer. The Wrath of Torax held position off their port side, its massive hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The Delphi's mind floated below them, graceful curves of biosynthetic material that housed thousands of linked Tyranny mines. 3 species, 3 philosophies, 1 destination. Jump coordinates locked, her navigator reported. The Krell are matching our calculations. The Tyranny have confirmed their trajectory. Chen took her command chair. Signal the fleet. We jump in 30 seconds. The countdown began. Chen thought about Morrison's words, about the secrets humanity had kept, and the revelations that lay ahead. She thought about whatever waited in the darkness of the Kepler sector, patient and deadly and unknown. Her hand rested on the arm of her chair as the jump engines engaged. Space folded around the 3 vessels, carrying them toward answers that might save or destroy everything they knew. The hunt had begun. The journey to the Kepler sector took 6 standard days. Chen used the time to study her unlikely allies, watching how they operated, learning their patterns and preferences. The Krell ran their ship like a weapon waiting to fire. Every crew member stood ready for combat at all times. Their drills were loud, aggressive, designed to prepare warriors for violence rather than prevent it. Torax commanded from a throne-like chair on his bridge, surrounded by tactical displays showing angles of attack on everything around them. The Tyranny were different. The Delphi's mind operated through collective consciousness. Thousands of individual minds linked into a single intelligence that saw patterns humans could not perceive. They communicated through their bioluminescent lights, conversations happening at speeds too fast for other species to follow. Ambassador Delphus served as their voice to the outside world, translating the collective's insights into words others could understand. Chen noticed that the Resolute consistently led the formation despite the Krell vessel's superior size. She had set their cruise speed at 3/4 power, and the Wrath of Torax strained its engines to keep pace without appearing to struggle. A small detail, but an important one. The Krell were learning that humans were not as limited as they believed. On the 5th day, they reached the debris field. It spread across thousands of kilometers, a cloud of destruction hanging in the void. Chunks of Krell armor tumbled slowly through space, mixed with frozen atmosphere and fragments of systems that had once powered a warship. The Resolute's sensors picked out details that told the story of what had happened here. The reactor core had imploded. Whatever hit the ship had punched through its shields, through its armor, and struck the one point where destruction would be absolute. 300 Krell had died in seconds, probably without ever seeing what killed them. Chen deployed sensor drones to map the debris field, while Torax sent recovery teams to search for remains. The Tyranny Collective processed data streams from all 3 vessels, looking for patterns that might reveal what had happened. 40 hours into the survey, Delphus contacted Chen directly. "We have found something," the ambassador's lights translated. "The anomalous energy signature Captain Marcus detected. It is not coming from the debris field. It is coming from there." The display updated to show a small planetoid approximately 50,000 kilometers away. It appeared unremarkable, a barren rock without atmosphere or notable features. But the Tyranny sensors had detected faint power readings emanating from beneath its surface. Chen opened a channel to all 3 vessels. "We've located a potential source for the energy signatures. It's a planetoid at the following coordinates. I recommend we approach with caution." Torax's response was immediate. "Caution is for prey animals. We should approach with weapons charged and shields at full power. If something hides there, we force it into the open." "Ambassador," Chen said carefully, "the last Krell vessel that approached this region actively was destroyed without warning. I suggest we try a different approach." "What approach?" Chen had thought about this for days. "Communication." The Krell ambassador made a sound that might have been disbelief. "You want to talk to whatever killed my warriors?" I want to find out if it's willing to talk. If it responds to communication, we learn something. If it doesn't respond, we've lost nothing by trying. Delphus added her support. The collective agrees with Captain Chen's proposal. Aggression provoked a lethal response once. A different stimulus might yield different results. Torax considered. His reluctance was visible in every scale, but even Krell pride could not entirely override tactical reality. Very well, try your communication, but if it fails, we do this my way. Chen directed her communications officer to transmit on all frequencies, including experimental bands that human scientists had developed but never expected anyone else to use. The message was simple: a mathematical sequence, prime numbers followed by geometric progressions, followed by more complex patterns. The universal language of intelligence. For hours, nothing happened. The planetoid remained silent, its faint energy readings unchanged. Chen began to wonder if the Tyranny sensors had detected natural phenomena rather than artificial signals. Then the response came. It was not in words. It was not in any known language. It was mathematics, echoing the sequences they had sent, but extending them further, solving problems, imposing new ones. An intelligence test answered and returned. The Tyranny collective solved the new sequences almost instantly. They transmitted the solutions back. The planetoid responded with coordinates, a specific location on its surface, a meeting point. Torax declared it an obvious trap. Chen agreed it probably was. Delphus noted that whatever lurked down there could have destroyed them already if that was its intention. Communication suggested other motives. The debate over who would investigate lasted until Chen simply volunteered. She would lead a landing party of 6, 2 humans, 2 Krell, 2 Tyranny, light weapons, heavy sensors, emergency extraction protocols. Torax insisted on joining personally. His warriors had died here. He would not send others where he would not go himself. They descended in a human shuttle, the only vessel small enough for a precise landing at the given coordinates. The Krell complained about the cramped quarters. The Tyranny floated in their encounter suits, patient and watchful. The coordinates marked an entrance, a tunnel carved into the rock, smooth-walled and clearly artificial. Chen led the way, her weapon ready but not raised. Behind her, Torax moved with surprising quiet for something so large. The Tyranny drifted like ghosts, their lights dimmed to avoid attracting attention. 300 meters down, the tunnel opened into a chamber. The space was vast, carved from the living rock of the planetoid. Machinery of no recognizable design covered the walls and floor, devices whose purpose Chen could not even guess at. But that was not what caught her attention. Something waited for them at the center of the chamber. It was not alive in any biological sense. Metal and crystal and energy woven together into a form that suggested function rather than aesthetics. It stood perhaps 2 meters tall, vaguely humanoid in shape, but clearly something else entirely. It spoke, not through sound, but through the same mathematics they had shared. The translation came directly into their minds, concepts rendered into thoughts they could understand. It called itself a warden. Chen felt her heart racing as the entity continued. It did not know who created it. That information had been purged from its memory long ago, perhaps deliberately. It knew only its purpose, to ensure that what slept beneath this planetoid continued sleeping. Torax demanded to know what slept here. What threat justified killing 300 Krell without warning? The warden showed them. Images appeared in their minds, vivid as memories they had never lived. A civilization that existed before any current species achieved sentience. Builders who created wonders across the galaxy, then created something they could not control. Not a weapon, not a disease. An idea given physical form. A concept that consumed everything it touched, converting matter and energy and thought into more of itself. A perfect replicator with no purpose except replication. The builders fought it for millennia. They lost. In desperation, they created the wardens and scattered them across the galaxy, each guarding a fragment of what they could not destroy. They induced the fragments to sleep through means the warden did not fully understand. And then the builders died, every last one, erasing themselves to ensure the sleepers would have nothing nearby to wake for. The galaxy had been repopulated since. New species arose, unaware of what came before. The wardens had watched, intervening only when necessary, killing only when they must. Chen found her voice. How long until it wakes on its own? The warden's response was uncertain. Centuries, perhaps. Millennia. Perhaps never if left undisturbed. But the younger species were expanding rapidly now. Probe ships ventured into territories the builders had quarantined for good reason. The Krell vessel was not the first the warden had destroyed. It would not be the last. Thorax's scales had paled to a color Chen had never seen before. You expect us to simply accept this? To retreat from entire regions of space on the word of a machine older than our civilizations? The warden expected nothing. It merely explained. What the younger species did with the information was their choice. The warden would continue its purpose regardless. Chen looked at the being before them, ancient beyond measure, dedicated to a task it might perform forever. She thought of the things sleeping beneath their feet, the horror that had consumed a civilization capable of creating miracles. She thought of humanity spreading across the stars, reaching for everything they could touch without knowing what might reach back. They had come looking for answers. They had found something far worse. They had found the truth. Morrison watched everything through Chen's helmet feed, transmitted across light years to the station where he waited with the council. He had made a decision before the landing party even returned to the surface. He broadcast the feed to every representative, every species, every government that could receive the signal. The galaxy needed to see this. The return journey was quiet. Thorax did not speak to the humans or the Tyranny. His warriors processed what they had witnessed, their certainty shattered by revelations that made their 30,000 years of conquest seem like children playing with toys. The Krell had always believed themselves the greatest threat in the galaxy. That belief lay in ruins. Chen spent the journey compiling reports, organizing data, preparing presentations that would be analyzed and debated for generations. She worked without rest, driven by the understanding that what they had learned changed everything. The Tyranny Collective processed the warden's information through thousands of link minds. Delphus reported their conclusions with lights that flickered between wonder and fear. The mathematics underlying the warden's technology suggested principles that could revolutionize their understanding of physics. The sleeper beneath the planetoid represented an existential threat beyond anything they had imagined. When the three vessels returned to Station Paramount, the council was already in emergency session. Morrison met Chen as she disembarked. He looked older than he had a week ago, the weight of what they had discovered pressing down on him like gravity itself. The council has been in continuous debate since we received your transmission, he told her. 47 species arguing about what to do with information none of them wanted to learn. What's the consensus? Morrison smiled without humor. There isn't one. The Veth want to study the wardens, learn their technology, find ways to defend against or control the sleepers. The Krell want to hunt down every quarantine zone and destroy the sleepers before they can wake. Half the council wants to pretend none of this happened and go back to their territorial disputes. And humanity? Humanity is watching, waiting, preparing. Morrison led her toward the council chamber. I've called for a final session. The tribunal against us is officially ended. Now we need to decide what comes next. The chamber was more crowded than Chen had ever seen it. Representatives who usually sent subordinates had come personally. The stakes were too high for delegation. High Arbiter Zethus called for order. The noise faded slowly, replaced by a tension that felt almost solid. The charges against humanity are formally withdrawn, Zethus announced. The evidence presented by Captain Marcus and the discoveries made by the joint mission have demonstrated that the destruction of the Krell vessel was caused by forces beyond any species represented here. We now face a different question. What do we do with this knowledge? The debate began immediately. Voices overlapped, translated by systems struggling to keep pace. Accusations flew between species that had been rivals for millennia. Old hatreds surfaced, amplified by new fears. Morrison stood and waited. The chamber gradually quieted as representatives noticed the human ambassador standing calmly at the center of the storm. May I address the council? Zethus gestured permission. Morrison walked to the center of the chamber, taking the same position where humanity had stood accused just days before. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the vast space. My species has been traveling among the stars for 30 years. In that time, we have learned that the galaxy is larger and stranger than we ever imagined. We have encountered wonders. We have encountered horrors. We have made mistakes, and we have learned from them. He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. We came here accused of destroying a Krell warship. We defended ourselves with evidence and argument. We cooperated with your investigation, and we shared what we discovered. Through that process, we have all learned something that changes everything. The galaxy is not empty. It was not always ours to claim. Something existed before us, something powerful enough to create miracles and dangerous enough to create nightmares. That something is gone now, but it left behind guardians and sleepers, warnings and threats. Morrison's voice grew stronger. We can respond to this knowledge in many ways. We can fight among ourselves over what to do. We can pretend we never learned it. We can retreat to our own territories and hope the problems stay far away. Or we can do something different. He turned to face the Krell delegation. Ambassador Torax, your warriors died because they encountered something they could not understand. That is not weakness. That is the price of exploration. Every species that reaches for the stars accepts that risk. Torax's scales shifted, but he did not interrupt. The question is not whether we face dangers we cannot comprehend. The question is whether we face them alone or together. Morrison turned to address the full council. I propose the creation of a joint scientific body to study the warden sites carefully under controlled protocols. I propose shared military resources to protect the quarantine zones from accidental intrusion. I propose, in essence, that this council become what it has always claimed to be, a genuine alliance rather than a collection of rivals waiting for the next war. The chamber erupted in response. Some voices supported the proposal, others condemned it. Old grievances surfaced, complaints about past treaties and broken promises. Torax rose, and his presence silenced the arguments nearby. The Krell ambassador walked to stand beside Morrison, an alignment that shocked many of the observers. My people have conquered more worlds than some species have discovered, Torax said. We have never asked for help. We have never needed allies. His voice hardened. But I have seen what waits in the darkness. I have looked upon a guardian that could destroy my greatest warship without effort. I have learned that something sleeps beneath the stars that could consume everything we have built. He turned to face his fellow Krell representatives. Pride is valuable. Pride has driven us to greatness. But pride that blinds us to genuine threats is foolishness. The human speaks truth. We cannot face this alone. None of us can. The Tyranny ambassador drifted forward, her lights forming patterns of agreement. The collective supports Ambassador Morrison's proposal. The evidence is clear. Cooperation offers survival. Division offers only death. One by one, other ambassadors rose to speak. The Veth, ancient and proud, admitted that even their vast knowledge had not prepared them for what the mission discovered. The smaller species, those who had always survived by hiding in the shadows of greater powers, saw an opportunity to matter in ways they never had before. The vote came as artificial dawn brightened the station. 47 species, casting their decisions through whatever mechanisms their cultures required. It took hours to compile the results. The motion passed. Not unanimously, but by a margin that surprised even Morrison. A new era had begun. Months later, Morrison stood on the observation deck of the first Joint Command Station, watching ships from dozens of species train together. Human cruisers flew formation with Krell warships. Tyranny science vessels coordinated with Veth research platforms. Colors and shapes that had never shared space now worked as one. Chen commanded the human contingent, her reputation transformed from captain to legend. She had walked into the chamber of a being older than her species and asked the questions that needed asking. Now she trained others to do the same. Marcus led a mixed squadron patrolling the nearest quarantine zone. His willingness to take risks and his talent for improvisation made him ideal for missions where anything might happen. He had grown into the role Morrison always suspected he could fill. A Tyranny envoy joined Morrison at the observation window. Delphus had requested assignment to the Joint Command, eager to watch this unprecedented cooperation develop. Your species adapted quickly to this new reality, she observed through translated lights. Morrison considered the observation. Humanity has always been good at finding threats to unite against. War is our oldest tradition. Cooperation in the face of danger comes naturally to us. And when the danger seems distant, when generations pass without incident, that's the real challenge. Morrison watched a Krell warship execute a perfect formation change alongside a human cruiser, movements synchronized despite centuries of different military doctrine. Fear fades. Old rivalries resurface. The work of unity is never finished. Will you succeed? Morrison thought about the sleeper beneath the planetoid, the horror that had consumed a civilization capable of creating wonders. He thought about the wardens, patient and eternal, waiting for the moment when their vigil might end in failure or success. He thought about humanity, a young species in an old galaxy, trying to find their place among powers that had risen and fallen for longer than humans had existed. Ask me again in 100 years, he said. Below them, the training exercises continued. Ships that had been enemies learned to be allies. Species that had fought wars learned to share knowledge. A galaxy that had always defined itself by conflict began, slowly and uncertainly, to imagine something different. It would not be easy. The old hatreds ran deep. The new fears were vast. But for the first time in recorded history, every spacefaring civilization faced the same direction, looking outward at the darkness that had always surrounded them. They had learned that they were not alone in the universe. They had learned that some things were best left sleeping, and they had learned, perhaps most importantly, that the greatest threats required the greatest cooperation to face. Morrison turned from the window and walked back toward the command center, where the work of building a new future waited. Behind him, the stars burned cold and distant, keeping their secrets for another day. But humanity was watching now, and they were not watching alone.